Some people say blood is thicker than water. What they don't tell you is that sometimes that blood runs cold enough to freeze you out completely. I'm Sarah, and I learned this lesson the hard way when my parents told me there wasn't enough space for me at our annual family retreat. Spoiler alert, there was plenty of space, just not for me. Let me paint you a picture of my family first. We're the Hendersons, and if you saw us from the outside, you'd think we were the perfect American family. My parents, Robert and Linda, have been married for 32 years. They have 4 children: my older brother Marcus, my older sister Jessica, me, and my younger sister Emily. We're the kind of family that takes coordinated Christmas photos and posts inspirational quotes about family bonds on Facebook. But here's what those photos don't show: I've been the invisible child for as long as I can remember. It started small when I was younger. Marcus was the golden boy, the football star who could do no wrong. Jessica was the beauty queen, homecoming princess, the one who brought home boyfriends that made my dad proud. Emily was the baby, the artist, the one who got away with everything because she was finding herself. And then there was me, the middle child who made decent grades, didn't cause trouble, and somehow became background noise in my own family. I remember being 12 years old and overhearing my mom on the phone with her sister. Marcus made varsity as a sophomore, she was saying. Jessica just got accepted to the dance team, and Emily won the art contest at school. There was a pause, and then, "Oh, Sarah, well, she's doing fine. Nothing exciting to report." Nothing exciting to report. That phrase haunted me for years. In high school, I threw myself into academics. I graduated salutatorian, got accepted to a prestigious university with a partial scholarship, and thought finally, I would be the child they bragged about. But at my graduation party, my dad spent the entire time talking about Marcus's new job and Jessica's engagement. When someone asked about my college plans, he said, "Oh, Sarah's always been the responsible one. She'll figure it out." I did figure it out. I worked 2 jobs through college, graduated with honors, and landed a good position at a marketing firm. But even then, family conversations centered around Marcus's promotion, Jessica's wedding planning, or Emily's latest artistic endeavor. I was present but not really seen. The pattern continued into my 20s. Family dinners where I'd share something important, only to have the conversation immediately shift to someone else. Holiday gatherings where I'd volunteer to help with everything, then watch as my contributions were overlooked or credited to someone else. Birthday celebrations where my own special day got overshadowed by someone else's news. But the family retreat was supposed to be different. It was supposed to be our time to reconnect, to strengthen our bonds, to make memories together. We'd been doing them for 5 years now, ever since my grandparents passed and left us a modest inheritance. Every summer, we'd rent a lake house for a long weekend, just immediate family, and spend time away from the chaos of daily life. Last year's retreat had been wonderful, or so I thought. We played board games, went swimming, had long conversations by the fire. I felt like I was finally part of the inner circle, like my family was finally seeing me. When we left, Mom hugged me tight and said, "This was exactly what we needed. I love our family time." So when March rolled around and Mom started mentioning the retreat planning, I was excited. I even took the initiative to research new lake houses, thinking maybe I could contribute something meaningful to the planning process. I sent Mom a list of 5 beautiful properties, complete with photos and amenities lists. "Oh, that's sweet of you," she said when I showed her. "But Jessica's already handling the booking. She found a place through a friend." Of course she did. As spring progressed, I'd ask casual questions about the retreat. "Have you guys picked dates yet? Should I request time off work? Any special activities planned this year?" The answers were always vague. "We're still figuring it out. Nothing concrete yet. You know how these things go." Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday evening in May. I was at home, meal prepping for the week, when my phone rang. Mom's name appeared on the screen and I answered cheerfully. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" "Hi, honey. I'm calling about the family retreat." My heart skipped with excitement. Finally, some concrete information. "Oh, good. I was wondering when we'd nail down the details. I can take time off pretty much any weekend in June or July." There was a pause. A long pause, the kind that makes your stomach drop before your brain even processes why. "Well, that's actually what I'm calling about. We've run into a bit of a situation." "A situation?" "Yes. You see, Jessica found this amazing property through her friend Madison. It's absolutely gorgeous, right on Lake Windermere. The photos are stunning." "That sounds wonderful, Mom. When are we going?" Another pause. "Here's the thing, sweetheart. The house is perfect for our needs, but it's a bit smaller than we usually rent. And with Marcus bringing Kelly and the kids and Emily wanting to bring David, Well, we're looking at a space issue. My meal prep container slipped from my hands, clattering onto the counter. A space issue. I know it's disappointing, but there just isn't enough room for everyone this year. We figured since you're single and don't have kids, you'd understand. Maybe you could do something fun for yourself that weekend instead. A spa day or something. The words hit me like physical blows. Not enough room, you'd understand, since you're single. How many people are going? I managed to ask. Well, let's see. Your father and me, Marcus and Kelly, and their 3 kids, Jessica and Tom, Emily and David. So 10 people total. The house has 4 bedrooms, so it works out perfectly. 10 people in a 4 bedroom house. But somehow there wasn't room for one more. I see, I said, my voice somehow steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. I knew you'd understand, sweetheart. You're always so reasonable about these things. We'll miss you, of course, but family dynamics can be complicated when you add too many people to the mix. Family dynamics, as if I was some external party crashing their real family gathering. Of course, Mom. I understand completely. Oh, good, I was worried you might be upset. You're such a good sport about these things. We'll take lots of pictures for you. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the half-prepared meals scattered across my counter. The rational part of my brain tried to make sense of it. Maybe the house really was too small. Maybe it was just an unfortunate coincidence. Maybe I was overreacting, but deep down, I knew better. This wasn't about space constraints. This was about my place in the family hierarchy, or rather my lack of one. I didn't cry that night. I was too numb for tears. Instead, I finished my meal prep with mechanical precision, put everything away, and went to bed early. But sleep didn't come easily. I lay awake replaying every family gathering, every casual dismissal, every moment I'd been made to feel like an afterthought. The next few weeks passed in a strange haze. My family mentioned the retreat occasionally, always in excited tones, always careful not to dwell on it when I was around. They talked about the activities they were planning, the meals they'd cook together, the memories they'd make. And each time I smiled and nodded and pretended it didn't feel like tiny daggers in my chest. I made my own plans for that weekend. A friend of mine, Kate, had been wanting to check out a new hiking trail about 2 hours north of the city. I agreed to go with her, thinking the physical exertion might help clear my head. At least I'd have something to do while my family was off bonding without me. The Friday before the retreat, Jessica called me. She was unusually chatty, bubbling over with excitement about the weekend ahead. Sarah, you should see this place. Madison sent me more photos, and it's like something out of a magazine. There's a private dock and everything. Oh, and the kitchen is gorgeous. I'm planning to cook this amazing seafood dinner Saturday night. It's going to be so special. I made appropriate sounds of enthusiasm, but inside I was screaming. She was calling to share her excitement about the very event I'd been excluded from. The audacity was breathtaking. I wish you could see it, she continued. Maybe next year we can find a bigger place so everyone can come. Everyone? As if I was somehow separate from everyone. That sounds lovely, Jess. I hope you all have a wonderful time. Thanks. Oh, and I'll make sure to take tons of photos. I know how much you love seeing our family pictures. After that call, something shifted inside me. The sadness I'd been carrying began to transform into something sharper, more focused. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I went through my family's social media accounts methodically, looking at photos from previous retreats, holiday gatherings, birthday parties, and a pattern emerged that I'd been too blind to see before. In photo after photo, I was either missing entirely or positioned at the edge of the frame, as if whoever was taking the picture was trying to crop me out. In group shots, I was always in the back row, partially obscured by someone else. In candid photos, I was often caught mid-sentence or looking away, never given the flattering angles that my siblings enjoyed. It wasn't accidental, it was systematic. I started taking screenshots, building a digital archive of my own invisibility. The evidence was overwhelming. For years, my family had been subtly erasing me from their narrative, and I'd been too desperate for their approval to notice. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather. Kate picked me up at 8, and we headed north toward the hiking trail. She was in great spirits, excited about the adventure ahead, but I was distracted. My phone kept buzzing with notifications from the family group chat that I was still part of, despite not being invited to the actual gathering. The messages started early. Marcus just arrived at the lake house. This place is incredible. Emily, the view from my room is amazing. Thanks for finding this gem, Jess. Mom, everyone's here safely, about to start our first family hike. I turned my phone face down and tried to focus on the trail ahead. Kate, bless her heart, kept up a steady stream of conversation about work, her dating life, weekend plans. She had no idea what was happening with my family, and I was grateful for the distraction. But even as I hiked through beautiful mountain scenery, my mind kept drifting back to Lake Windermere. I imagined my family sitting around a breakfast table, laughing at inside jokes I wasn't part of. I pictured them planning activities that would become stories they'd tell for years to come, stories that would start with, "Remember that amazing retreat when." Remember when what? When Sarah wasn't there to ruin the family dynamics. By the time Kate and I reached the summit, my phone had dozens of new notifications. Despite my better judgment, I opened the group chat. The messages painted a picture of perfect family bliss. Photos of the lake house, which was indeed stunning. Pictures of my siblings and their partners lounging on the deck, drinks in hand. Videos of my nephews jumping off the dock into crystal clear water. And then I saw it. A group photo taken on the deck, everyone arranged in perfect formation, smiling at the camera. The caption, written by my mother, made my blood run cold. Annual Henderson Family Retreat 2024. All present and accounted for. Blessed family time # perfect weekend. All present and accounted for. I stared at that phrase until the letters blurred together. All present and accounted for, as if their family was complete. As if I had never existed at all. "You okay?" Kate asked, noticing my expression. I looked up at her, this friend who had invited me on a spontaneous adventure, who had included me without a second thought, and I realized something important. Kate had shown me more genuine care and consideration in one morning than my family had in months. "I'm perfect," I said, and for the first time in weeks, I meant it. We spent the rest of the day hiking, taking photos at scenic overlooks, sharing trail mix and stupid jokes. Kate posted pictures of our adventure on Instagram, tagging me with captions like "best hiking buddy ever," and "so grateful for amazing friends who say yes to spontaneous adventures." That evening, back in my apartment, I looked at Kate's posts and then at my family's retreat photos side by side. The contrast was striking. In Kate's photos, I looked happy, included, valued. In my family's photos, I was simply absent. Sunday's family group chat was more of the same. More perfect moments, more inside jokes, more evidence of the wonderful time they were having without me. By evening, they were posting last day photos with captions about how much they'd miss each other and how this had been the best retreat yet. Jessica posted a particularly painful message. "So grateful for this time with my favorite people in the world, already planning next year's adventure." Her favorite people in the world, the message was clear, I wasn't one of them. Monday morning brought a text from my mother. "Hope you had a good weekend, honey. We missed you at the retreat, but it was probably for the best given how crazy things got with all the kids running around. Talk soon." We missed you. Past tense, as if my absence was just a minor footnote to their perfect weekend. That's when I made my decision. For 28 years, I had been the accommodating daughter, the one who didn't make waves, who understood when there wasn't enough room, who smiled and accepted whatever scraps of attention my family threw my way. I had convinced myself that this was love, that this was how families worked, that some people were just naturally more central to the family dynamic than others. But sitting in my apartment on that Monday morning, looking at photos of the family retreat I'd been deliberately excluded from, I realized something crucial. I had been enabling my own invisibility. Every time I smiled and said, "I understand," when I was left out, I was teaching them that excluding me had no consequences. Every time I accepted their casual dismissals without protest, I was confirming their belief that I didn't really matter. Every time I bent over backward to accommodate their preferences while receiving nothing in return, I was reinforcing the family hierarchy that kept me at the bottom. It was time for that to change. I started small. When Mom called later that week to share details about the retreat, you should have seen Emily's face when she caught that fish. I didn't respond with my usual enthusiasm. I didn't ask follow-up questions or make encouraging sounds. I just listened politely and said, "That sounds nice." When Jessica texted me photos from the retreat with messages like, "Wish you were here," I didn't respond immediately with gratitude for being included in the aftermath. I waited several hours and replied with a simple "thanks for sharing." The change in my behavior was subtle but noticeable. My family was used to me being their emotional cheerleader, celebrating their experiences and making them feel good about themselves. When I stopped playing that role, the dynamic shifted. Marcus called me the following Tuesday, ostensibly to catch up, but I could tell he was fishing for something. "Mom said you seemed a little quiet when she called," he said. "Everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I replied, "just busy with work." "You're not upset about missing the retreat, are you? Because you know it was just a space thing, right? It wasn't personal." "Not personal." The phrase that people use when something is absolutely, completely personal. Of course not, I said. I had a great weekend hiking with Kate. Oh, good. Mom was worried you might be feeling left out or something. Feeling left out. Because that's exactly what had happened, but saying it out loud would make me the problem. Not at all. I'm sure you all needed the family time. The conversation continued for a few more minutes, but I could hear the confusion in Marcus's voice. He was used to me being more engaged, more eager to hear about family activities, more grateful to be included in the conversation even as an afterthought, but I was done being grateful for crumbs. Over the next few weeks, I began implementing what I privately called the Sarah treatment. It was essentially the same level of consideration and inclusion that my family had been showing me, reflected back at them. When Mom called to chat about her garden, I listened politely but didn't ask detailed follow-up questions or offer to come help with the weeding like I usually did. When Jessica invited me to her birthday dinner, I said I already had plans. I didn't elaborate or offer to reschedule. I just said I couldn't make it. When Emily asked me to look at her latest paintings and give feedback, I said they looked nice and left it at that. No detailed analysis, no encouragement, no emotional investment. And when the family group chat started planning for Dad's birthday celebration, I didn't volunteer to organize anything. I didn't offer suggestions for restaurants or offer to pick up the cake. I just waited to see what they'd plan without my input. The response was immediate and telling. Within a week, I received concerned calls from both my parents. Mom was worried I was going through something. Dad wanted to know if I was upset about work or my love life. Neither of them directly asked if I was upset about the retreat, but I could tell they were connecting the dots. Jessica was more direct. She showed up at my apartment on a Thursday evening with takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. "Okay, what's going on?" she asked, settling herself on my couch without invitation. "You've been weird lately, and everyone's starting to notice." "I don't know what you mean," I said, accepting the food but not the implication that I was the problem. "Come on, Sarah, you're being distant. You didn't come to my birthday dinner, you barely talk in the family chat, and Mom said you seemed disinterested when she called about Dad's party planning." I looked at my sister, this beautiful, confident woman who had never once in her life had to wonder if she was welcome at a family gathering. How could I explain to her what it felt like to be slowly erased from your own family story? "I've just been busy," I said finally. "Busy with what? You never have anything going on." There it was. The casual cruelty that my family specialized in, delivered with a smile and wrapped in concern. According to Jessica, I never had anything going on. My life was apparently so empty and uninteresting that my availability was a given. "I have plenty going on," I said quietly. "You just don't pay attention to it." Jessica blinked, clearly taken aback. "That's not true. I care about what's happening in your life." "Do you?" "When's the last time you asked me about my work, or my friends, or anything that matters to me?" We talk all the time." "You talk, I listen, there's a difference." The conversation continued for another hour, with Jessica alternating between defensiveness and confusion. She genuinely seemed to believe that she was a caring sister, that our family was close and supportive. She couldn't see the pattern of exclusion and dismissal that had defined my experience for years. But I could see it clearly now, and I wasn't going to pretend it didn't exist anymore. The real test came 3 weeks later when Marcus called with exciting news. "Kelly's pregnant," he announced. "We just found out yesterday. We're thinking of having a family dinner this weekend to share the news with everyone." My immediate instinct was to offer congratulations, to volunteer to help plan the dinner, to ask a dozen questions about due dates and baby names. Instead, I took a breath and said, "That's wonderful, Marcus, congratulations." Silence. He was clearly waiting for more. "So, do you want to come to dinner on Saturday? Kelly's been craving Mom's famous lasagna, so we thought we'd do it at the house." "Let me check my calendar and get back to you," I said. "Check your calendar for a family dinner." "Yes, Marcus. I'll let you know." I didn't call back until Friday afternoon. "Sorry," I said when he answered. "I already have plans for Saturday." "Can't you change them? This is kind of a big deal." "I'm sure it is. Give Kelly my congratulations." The fallout was swift and dramatic. By Saturday evening, I had received multiple calls and texts from various family members, all expressing confusion and concern about my absence from the pregnancy announcement dinner. Mom left a voicemail that I didn't return until Sunday. "Sarah, honey, I don't understand what's going on with you lately. Missing Marcus and Kelly's big announcement. That's not like you at all. Please call me back. We need to talk." We need to talk, the ominous phrase that every child learns to dread. but I wasn't a child anymore, and I wasn't going to be summoned like one. When I finally called Mom back on Sunday afternoon, she didn't wait for pleasantries. Sarah Elizabeth Henderson, what is going on with you? The use of my full name was supposed to shame me into compliance. It was a tactic that had worked for 28 years, but not anymore. I'm not sure what you mean, Mom. You know exactly what I mean. You've been acting strange for weeks. You missed Jessica's birthday, you barely participated in planning your father's celebration, and now you skip Marcus's big announcement. This isn't like you. Maybe this is exactly like me, and you just haven't been paying attention. Silence. I had never spoken to my mother like this before, with calm directness instead of apologetic accommodation. I don't understand, she said finally. Have we done something to upset you? Have we done something? Not have I done something. The responsibility was immediately diffused among the collective, as if individual accountability was impossible. I think, I said carefully, that we have different ideas about what family means. What's that supposed to mean? It means that I've spent 28 years being an afterthought in this family, and I'm done pretending that's normal. An afterthought? Sarah, that's ridiculous. You're our daughter. We love you. Do you? Because love usually involves actually wanting someone around. Another silence, longer this time. If this is about the retreat. It's not about the retreat, Mom. It's about everything. It's about being the one who's always left out, always overlooked, always expected to understand when there's no room for me. It's about being invisible in my own family. You're not invisible. You're being dramatic. Dramatic, the label that gets slapped on women who dare to express dissatisfaction with their treatment. The word designed to make you question your own perception of reality. Maybe I am being dramatic, I said. Maybe I should have been dramatic years ago. The conversation ended with Mom promising we'd work this out and me knowing that we wouldn't, at least not in the way she imagined. She wanted me to return to my old role, to be the accommodating daughter who didn't make waves, but that version of me was gone. The real turning point came a month later in August when Emily called with news about her engagement to David. We're getting married, she squealed into the phone. David proposed last night and it was perfect. We're thinking of a spring wedding, maybe April or May. I offered appropriate congratulations and listened as she gushed about the proposal details, the ring, their initial planning thoughts. And then she said something that made my blood freeze. Oh, and Sarah, I have a huge favor to ask. I know you're really good at organizing stuff, and I was wondering if you'd be my maid of honor. I know it's a lot of work, but you're so good at handling details, and I really need someone I can count on. Maid of honor, the person responsible for planning the bachelorette party, organizing the bridal shower, coordinating with vendors, managing the other bridesmaids, and countless other thankless tasks. The role that required enormous amounts of time, energy, and money, all in service of making someone else's day perfect. The old Sarah would have said yes immediately, would have been grateful to be chosen for such an important role, would have thrown herself into wedding planning with enthusiasm and dedication. But the new Sarah recognized this for what it was. Another opportunity for my family to extract labor from me while maintaining the illusion of inclusion. That's very flattering, Emily, I said. But I'm going to have to decline. Silence, complete stunned silence. You decline. Yes, I don't think I'm the right person for that role. But you're my sister, and you're so good at planning things. Who else would I ask? I'm sure you'll figure something out. Maybe Jessica would be interested. Jessica's already going to be a bridesmaid. I need someone who can really take charge of everything. Someone who can take charge, translation. Someone who will do all the work while the bride gets all the credit. I'm sorry, Emily, but I can't commit to that level of responsibility right now. Can't or won't? The question hung in the air between us, sharp and accusatory. Both, I said finally. The conversation deteriorated quickly after that. Emily cried, accused me of being selfish, said she couldn't believe I would refuse to support her on the most important day of her life. She called Mom, who called me within an hour, demanding an explanation for my cruel rejection of Emily's request. By the end of the week, I had received intervention calls from every family member except my father, who generally stayed out of emotional conflicts. The message was consistent. I was being unreasonable, hurtful, and selfish. Emily was devastated. The family was worried about me. This wasn't the Sarah they knew and loved, and they were right. This wasn't the Sarah they knew and loved. The Sarah they knew was a pushover who absorbed their emotional labor without complaint. The Sarah they loved was the one who made their lives easier while asking for nothing in return. But that Sarah was gone, and they were struggling to understand who had taken her place. The final straw came in September, when Dad had his annual birthday celebration. For the past 5 years, I had been the one to organize his party. I researched restaurants, made reservations, coordinated with everyone's schedules, arranged for the cake, and handled all the logistics while my siblings showed up and enjoyed the celebration. This year, I did nothing. No phone calls to restaurants, no group texts about scheduling, no cake orders or decoration planning. I simply waited to see what would happen when the family organizer went on strike. What happened was chaos. A week before Dad's birthday, Marcus called in a panic. "Sarah, what's going on with Dad's party? Mom said you usually handle that stuff, but nobody's heard anything about plans." "I'm not handling it this year," I said simply. "Why not?" "Because I don't want to." The simplicity of my answer seemed to short-circuit his brain. In our family, "I don't want to" had never been an acceptable reason for not doing something, especially when it came to family obligations. "But who's going to organize it? I assume one of his other children will step up." What followed was a frantic week of my siblings trying to coordinate a birthday celebration without their usual unpaid event planner. Jessica attempted to make restaurant reservations but couldn't find anything available on short notice. Emily volunteered to make a cake but realized she didn't know Dad's favorite flavor or if anyone had dietary restrictions to consider. Marcus tried to create a group chat to coordinate but couldn't remember all the details that needed to be handled. In the end, they managed to throw together a last-minute celebration at Mom and Dad's house with pizza delivery and a grocery store cake. It wasn't terrible, but it was a far cry from the carefully coordinated celebrations I had been organizing for years. I attended the party, brought a nice gift, and was perfectly pleasant to everyone. But I didn't offer to help with setup or cleanup. I didn't coordinate with others about gifts to avoid duplication. I didn't take charge of anything, and the difference was noticeable. After the guests left, Mom cornered me in the kitchen while I was putting my coat on. "We need to talk," she said. "Really talk. This has gone on long enough." "What has gone on long enough?" I asked. "This attitude you've developed, this coldness. You used to be such a caring daughter, always helping, always making sure everyone was taken care of. Now you're like a stranger." "I'm the same person I've always been, Mom. I'm just not doing unpaid labor for people who don't appreciate it anymore." "Unpaid labor, Sarah, we're your family. Families help each other." "Do they? Because I've been helping this family for 28 years, and I can't think of a single time anyone went out of their way to help me." "That's not true. When's the last time any of you offered to help me with something? When's the last time someone coordinated a celebration for my birthday? When's the last time someone checked on me when I was going through a difficult time?" Mom opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. The silence stretched between us. "You never seemed like you needed help," she said finally. "You're so independent, so capable, we just assumed. You assumed that I didn't have the same needs as everyone else. You assumed that I was happy being the family caretaker without any caregiving in return. We didn't assume anything, you never asked for help." And there it was. The fundamental misunderstanding that had shaped my entire relationship with my family. They believed that care and support should be earned through asking, through making yourself vulnerable and needy. They didn't understand that love should be freely given, that families should proactively look out for each other, that inclusion shouldn't require begging. "I shouldn't have to ask my family to care about me," I said quietly. "I shouldn't have to request basic consideration and inclusion. Those things should be automatic." I left the party that night knowing that nothing would ever be the same between us. The invisible contract that had governed our family relationships for decades had been torn up, and I was the one holding the pieces. The aftermath was predictable. My siblings alternated between anger and confusion, unable to understand why their reliable family organizer had suddenly become unavailable. Mom tried various approaches: guilt, manipulation, bribes, threats to get me to return to my old role. Dad, characteristically, stayed out of the conflict but made pointed comments about family loyalty and forgiveness. But I held firm. I had spent 28 years being the family member who gave more than she received, who accommodated everyone else's needs while suppressing her own, who smiled and accepted whatever scraps of affection were thrown her way. Those days were over. The changes in my life were immediate and dramatic. With all the time and energy I had been investing in my family's needs, I suddenly had space for my own interests and relationships. I took up photography, something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for. I strengthened my friendships with people who valued and appreciated me. I started dating seriously for the first time in years, no longer worried about bringing someone home to a family that barely acknowledged my existence. And slowly, gradually, I built a life that centered around people who actually wanted me there. 6 months after Dad's birthday party, I received an unexpected text from Jessica. It was a photo of her and Tom at a romantic dinner with the message, "Celebrating our 3-year anniversary. Wish you were here to see how happy we are." I stared at the message for a long time, marveling at its casual narcissism. She wished I was there to witness her happiness, to serve as an audience for her perfect life. It had never occurred to her to wonder if I was happy, if my life contained moments worth celebrating, if I might want someone to witness my joy. I didn't respond to the text. I simply deleted it and went back to editing photos from my weekend hiking trip with Kate and 2 other friends who had become central figures in my new life. A few weeks later, Emily called with wedding planning updates. Her voice was strained, exhausted. "Sarah, I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you sure you won't reconsider being my maid of honor? Jessica's trying to help, but she's so busy with her own stuff, and I really need someone who can focus on the details." Someone who can focus on the details. Translation. Someone who will sacrifice their own time and energy to make Emily's life easier. "I'm sure," I said, "but I hope you have a beautiful wedding." "It's not going to be beautiful," Emily snapped. "It's going to be a disaster because nobody cares enough to help me properly." The irony was rich. Emily was learning in real time what it felt like to need support and not receive it. She was experiencing the frustration of having to coordinate everything herself, of feeling like the burden of success rested entirely on her shoulders. It was the same feeling I'd lived with for years, but now it was happening to the family favorite, and suddenly it was a tragedy worthy of emergency intervention. "Have you asked Marcus to help?" I suggested. "Or maybe Mom." "Marcus doesn't know anything about wedding planning, and Mom's ideas are all from the 80s. I need someone who actually understands what I want." "Then hire a wedding planner." "We can't afford a wedding planner. That's why I need family to help." And there it was, the truth laid bare. Emily didn't want my emotional support or sisterly bonding. She wanted free labor from someone with the skills to execute her vision without the professional fees. "I'm sorry you're stressed," I said, and I genuinely was. "But I can't be the solution to every family crisis anymore." The call ended with Emily in tears and me feeling something I'd never experienced before. Complete peace with disappointing my family. Christmas that year was a revelation. For the first time in my adult life, I made my own holiday plans instead of automatically defaulting to family obligations. I spent Christmas Eve with Kate's family, who welcomed me warmly and treated me like a valued guest rather than unpaid help. Christmas Day, I volunteered at a local shelter, serving meals to people who appreciated every moment of kindness. I didn't attend the Henderson family Christmas gathering. I didn't even send a group text with my regrets. I simply wasn't there. The response was explosive. Mom called 6 times on Christmas Day, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. "Sarah, where are you? Everyone's asking about you. This is family time. You can't just skip Christmas." Marcus sent a series of texts ranging from confused to angry. "Mom's crying because you're not here. I hope whatever points you're trying to make is worth hurting your own mother." Jessica left one message that perfectly encapsulated her worldview. "I don't understand why you're punishing all of us. If you're mad at Mom and Dad, fine, but what did I ever do to you? What did she ever do to me?" The question that proved she had learned nothing from the past year, that she still saw my request for basic consideration as unreasonable punishment. But it was Emily's message that surprised me most. Instead of anger or guilt tripping, she sent a simple text. "I miss you today. I know things have been weird between us, but I hope you're somewhere that makes you happy." It was the first message from any family member in months that acknowledged my feelings as valid, that expressed concern for my well-being rather than their own convenience. I almost called her back, almost. But then I remembered the retreat, the casual way they'd excluded me while claiming to miss me, the pattern of dismissal that had defined our relationship for decades. One moment of awareness didn't erase 28 years of invisibility, so I didn't call. Instead, I sent a brief reply, "Thank you, I am happy, I hope you are too." The new year brought a strange sort of peace. My family had finally stopped trying to force me back into my old role, perhaps recognizing that their attempts were futile. We settled into a new normal, polite but distant, occasional texts but no real intimacy, formal holiday greetings but no shared celebrations. I wasn't completely cut off. I still received wedding invitations and birth announcements, still got added to group chats about family news. but I was no longer expected to organize, coordinate, or sacrifice for the family's benefit. I had become what I'd always been in their hearts, optional. The difference was that now it was official. In February, I received a wedding invitation for Emily and David's spring wedding. It was beautiful, thick cardstock, elegant calligraphy, clearly expensive. I was invited as a regular guest, no special roles or responsibilities attached. I yes and bought a gift from their registry. When the wedding day arrived, I wore a lovely dress, brought my present, and sat in the designated family section. I smiled during the ceremony, applauded at appropriate moments, and made polite conversation during cocktail hour. But I didn't help with setup. I didn't coordinate family photos. I didn't manage any behind-the-scenes crises. I was simply a guest at my sister's wedding, and it was surprisingly liberating. During the reception, I watched my family scramble to handle various small emergencies: a missing boutonniere, confusion about the dinner timeline, a flower girl meltdown. These were exactly the kinds of problems I would have anticipated and solved in advance during my years as the family organizer, but they managed without me. Jessica stepped up to handle the flower girl situation. Mom coordinated with the caterers about timing. Marcus took charge of corralling people for photos. They figured it out because they had to. As I watched them problem solve and support each other, I felt a mixture of vindication and sadness. They were capable of caring for each other. They just never had to before because I'd always been there to handle everything. Near the end of the evening, Emily found me at my table as I was gathering my things to leave. "Sarah," she said, slightly breathless from dancing, "thank you for coming. I know things have been complicated between us this year." "You're welcome. It was a beautiful wedding." "I wanted to apologize," she said, the words coming out in a rush. "For the maid of honor thing. I realized later that I wasn't really asking you to be part of my special day. I was asking you to work for free to make my special day happen." "That wasn't fair." I studied my youngest sister's face, seeing genuine remorse there for the first time in our adult relationship. "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "I also wanted you to know that I get it now. A little bit anyway. This year was really hard without you handling everything. I never realized how much you did for all of us until you stopped doing it." It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement of my worth that I'd received from any family member in decades. "I'm glad the wedding was everything you wanted," I said, and I meant it. "It was, but it would have been better if we'd been closer, if I'd been a better sister to you." For a moment, I felt the old pull to reassure her, to minimize my hurt and rush to forgive. But I'd learned the difference between accountability and manipulation, between genuine change and temporary guilt. "Maybe we can work on that," I said, "but it's going to require real effort from both of us." Emily nodded seriously. "I'd like that if you're willing to try." "We'll see," I said, giving her a brief hug before heading to the exit. As I drove home that night, I reflected on how different this interaction felt from the manipulative attempts at reconciliation I'd received throughout the year. Emily hadn't asked me to forget the past or immediately return to our old dynamic. She'd acknowledged her role in the problem and expressed willingness to do the work of rebuilding our relationship. It was a start. Maybe not enough to repair decades of damage, but a start nonetheless. Over the following months, Emily proved that her wedding night apology wasn't just emotional manipulation driven by guilt and champagne. She began reaching out regularly, not when she needed something, but just to check in. She asked about my photography hobby, remembered details about my work projects, and invited me to activities that were genuinely about spending time together rather than extracting labor. The rest of my family, however, remained largely unchanged. They had adapted to functioning without my organizational skills, but they hadn't developed any real insight into their treatment of me over the years. I was no longer useful to them, so they'd simply adjusted their expectations and moved on, which was fine with me. I'd built a life filled with people who valued my presence, not just my productivity. I had friendships based on mutual care and reciprocity. I'd started dating someone who was genuinely interested in my thoughts and feelings. I discovered talents and interests that had been suppressed during my years of family service. For the first time in my adult life, I was living for myself instead of in service to others' expectations. The one-year anniversary of the family retreat passed without fanfare. I marked it privately by looking through the photos Kate had taken during our hiking trip that same weekend, images of me laughing, exploring, being fully present in my own life rather than missing someone else's. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Mom. "Hi, honey," she said, her voice careful and formal. "I was just thinking about you and wanted to check in." "That's nice, Mom. How are you?" "We're doing well. Your father's garden is really coming along this year, and Jessica just got a promotion at work. She shared family updates for several minutes before getting to what I suspected was the real purpose of her call. I've been thinking a lot lately about this past year, she said finally, about the changes in our family dynamic. I waited, not offering to make this conversation easier for her. I want you to know that we miss you. The family gatherings aren't the same without you there. I'm sure they're different, I agreed. I know you felt excluded from some things, and I want you to know that was never intentional. We never meant to make you feel unwanted. Never intentional, the refuge of people who want credit for good intentions while avoiding responsibility for harmful actions. But the impact was the same regardless of intent, I said. Yes, she said quietly, I'm starting to understand that. It was the first time my mother had ever acknowledged that good intentions don't erase harmful outcomes, progress, even if incremental. I was wondering, she continued, if you might be interested in joining us for the family retreat this year. We're going back to the same lake house, and there's definitely room for everyone. There's definitely room for everyone. The phrase that would have meant everything to me a year ago now felt hollow and calculated. I appreciate the invitation, I said, but I already have plans that weekend. It wasn't entirely true. I didn't know what weekend she was referring to, and I didn't have specific plans yet. But I had learned the power of boundaries, and I wasn't ready to subject myself to a weekend of forced family bonding with people who still didn't understand what they'd done wrong. Could you change your plans? It would mean a lot to have the whole family together. The whole family, as if I was an accessory to be added for completeness, rather than a family member whose presence was genuinely valued. I don't think so, Mom. But I hope you all have a wonderful time. The conversation ended with polite pleasantries and mutual expressions of love that felt more like habit than genuine emotion. After hanging up, I realized something important. I no longer needed their validation or inclusion to feel complete. The invitation to the retreat had been a test I hadn't even realized I was taking. A year ago, that invitation would have felt like salvation, like proof that I mattered after all. I would have canceled any existing plans and shown up grateful just to be included. But now I had a life full of people who invited me to things because they genuinely wanted my company, not because they felt obligated to include the family organizer. I had relationships based on mutual respect and affection rather than one-sided service. I had learned to value myself, which meant I no longer needed others to do it for me. 3 weeks later, Emily called with news that she was pregnant. Her voice was bubbling with excitement as she shared the details, how far along she was, when the baby was due, their hopes and fears about becoming parents. I wanted to tell you first, she said, before we announce it to everyone else. You're going to be an aunt again. It was the first time in years that a family member had chosen to share important news with me privately before making a general announcement. The gesture felt significant, a sign of the genuine relationship we'd been slowly rebuilding. That's wonderful news, Emily. I'm so happy for you and David. Thank you, and Sarah, I was wondering, would you consider being the baby's godmother? I know things have been complicated with our family, but you're important to me, and I want you to be part of this baby's life. The request caught me off guard. Unlike the maid of honor role, which had been about labor and obligation, this was about relationship and commitment. Emily was asking me to be part of her child's life not because she needed something from me, but because she valued who I was. I'd be honored, I said, surprising myself with the quickness of my response. Really? I was worried you might say no. Emily, my issues with our family have never been about not loving you. They've been about not being treated with respect and consideration. What you're offering now is both. I want to do better, she said softly. I want my child to grow up in a family where everyone feels valued and included. I don't want them to experience what you went through. It was the clearest acknowledgement, yet, that my family's treatment of me had been problematic, and that the patterns needed to change for the next generation. 6 months later, I held my nephew for the first time in the hospital room, surrounded by my family. The moment was tender and sweet, but what struck me most was how different the dynamic felt. Emily had insisted that I be included in all the planning and preparation leading up to the birth. Jessica had asked thoughtful questions about my photography work when she arrived at the hospital. Marcus had actually thanked me for the thoughtful baby gift I'd brought. Even Mom and Dad seemed to be making an effort to engage with me as a person rather than a function. The changes were small but meaningful. They suggested that my year of boundaries and consequences had taught my family something important about taking people for granted. As I held my nephew and listened to Emily talk about their hopes for his future, I realized that my retreat from the family had ultimately created space for something healthier to grow. By refusing to accept crumbs, I had forced them to offer something more substantial. Not everyone had risen to the occasion. Some family members remained largely unchanged in their capacity for genuine relationship. But enough progress had been made that I could envision a future where I was part of this family by choice rather than obligation, where my presence was valued rather than assumed. It had taken 28 years to understand that love without respect isn't really love at all, and another year to learn that teaching people how to treat you sometimes requires being willing to walk away. But as I looked around that hospital room at my imperfect, slowly learning family, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades: the possibility of belonging without disappearing. The annual family retreat happened that summer without me, just as I'd planned. But this time, my absence felt different. Instead of being excluded and erased, I had chosen to prioritize my own well being. Instead of being invisible, I was missed. Emily sent me photos throughout the weekend, not as an afterthought or obligation, but because she genuinely wanted to share the experience with me. The images showed a family that was learning to function differently, to share responsibilities more equitably, to appreciate what they had instead of taking it for granted. And in my own life, I spent that weekend doing something I'd never done before: hosting my own gathering. Kate and several other friends came to my apartment for a weekend of good food, meaningful conversation, and genuine connection. We took photos where everyone was included, where every person mattered, where the joy was authentic rather than performed. Looking at those photos later, I saw something I'd been searching for my entire life: evidence that I was wanted, valued, and loved exactly as I was. It had taken a family retreat I wasn't invited to for me to finally find